If you want to become a better tennis player and you want to win more matches, one of the most important mental skills that you can develop is the ability to not make excuses and blame other things or other people or other stuff for your poor performances. Because if it's always somebody else or something else's fault, it doesn't really allow you to improve. I grew up playing tennis and soccer, or tennis and football, depending where you're from. And when I moved to Canada, I started playing for a soccer team, and we used to lose quite regularly. And after every match that we lost, the whole team would start blaming the ref and the opponents for cheating and blaming everyone else except for ourselves. I'm like, can we just look at our performance? Because you're blaming those things. But I know there was an incident where I gave away a silly ball to the opponent, so that's something that I could have changed. There was an instance where you kind of made several mistakes there. We weren't disciplined with our position. Why don't we stop blaming them, and why don't we look for the things that we were doing wrong, because that gives us a chance to improve. If everything is someone else's fault, it doesn't really leave us many options on the pitch. But in tennis, if it's always something else's fault, now we're at the mercy of the bad bounce gods. We just have to kind of take whatever comes. So if you want to become a better player, it's basically a skill that you have to develop. And I had to learn this myself, because I used to be a terrible excuse maker in tennis. You have to recognize excuses. So when you're playing poorly and you're like, oh, you know, the sun's in my eyes, that's an excuse. Yeah, the sun might be in your eyes, but when your opponent comes around to that end, it's in their eyes as well. Oh, it's windy. Yeah, that's the same for both of you. It's just an excuse. Bad bounces, it happens to both of you. All of those things are excuses. Oh, I don't care whether I lose. I class that as an excuse. It's just a defense mechanism to try and deflect and, you know, push away from the fact that you want to be winning and you're not winning, so you start to say that you don't care. And there's lots of other kind of forms that excuse making comes in, but it's really important that you kind of recognize that you do it. So start to become aware of the language that you use with yourself. Start to become aware of the things that you say to yourself on court, and ask yourself, is that a real thing? Is that something that I can control, or is that an excuse? Because you have to be present and focused, and you have to pay attention and focus on the things that you can control and not let things that you can't control distract you. So if your opponent feeds you junk balls, it's your job to deal with that, so you can't blame them. If you start to blame them in your head, you've got to stop yourself and recognize that, okay, that's my opponent's tactic. I need to find a way to adjust to this tactic. If you get bad bounces, we've all been there, it can be very annoying. You have to try and suppress any rage at the bad bounce and just focus on what you can control. If you're having a bad day, instead of starting to blame stuff, focus more on trying to watch the ball more efficiently through to the contact point. Focus more on your footwork and being set up in better positions, and do everything you can to kind of focus on the things that you can control and avoid excuse making, which is just a major distraction. So hopefully what I'm saying makes sense to you, and hopefully you've taken it in the right way, because it really can be a hindrance to a lot of people on court. It was definitely something that used to hold me back. I've actually made another video about my fear of losing, because there was a few things that I used to struggle with, and I had to do some interesting things to overcome it. So if that's interesting to you, I would check that out, because it's going to talk about some brain-based training that you can actually do to help improve your mental toughness as well.